Sometimes the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected places. A tiny spark of curiosity or a strange habit can grow into a life-changing success. This story will show you that patience, self-discipline, and listening, even to a plant, can transform your life. I used to waste hours scrolling on my phone, ignoring the world around me. Life felt like a blurry background, while everyone else seemed so far ahead. I thought success was meant for other people. One day, I noticed a small green plant on my desk. It looked healthy, alive, and somehow wiser than me. "What you doing, huh?" I joked. I laughed at myself for talking to a plant. Yet, somehow word just came out. Teach me something. Help me stop wasting time. And then, I waited. Nothing happened at first. I sighed and went back to scrolling. But the next morning, I noticed I hadn't touched my phone for hours. How strange. I started talking to the plant every day. What should I do first? I whispered. Slowly, small ideas popped in my mind. Days passed, and I noticed a change. I was waking up earlier. I was reading, planning, even exercising. A tiny habit sparked by a plant. One afternoon, my friend visited. "You're glowing, man. What changed?" I laughed. "I talk to my plant now." My friend laughed, but I realized something. Small, consistent efforts were building a rhythm. Even a silly habit could spark real change. Weeks later, I found myself creating little projects, ideas I always ignored. The plant watched me, and somehow, I felt accountable. One evening, I whispered to my plant, "Am I ready to start my business?" And then, an idea struck me like lightning. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I made a list of tiny tasks. "Just start small," I whispered to my plant. Each task I completed felt like a victory. I felt a strange pride in finishing small chores. Washing dishes, tidying the desk, reading 10 pages of a book, it all mattered. By the third week, I noticed my phone stayed in my pocket longer. "I'm actually disciplined," I whispered, amazed. I share my progress with a friend. Talking to a plant. "Really?" he laughed. But I could see the envy in his eyes. One morning, the plant seemed to shimmer in sunlight. I imagined it nodding at me. Could a plant really teach discipline? I decided to wake up at 6 a.m. every day. At first, it was torture. Coffee and groggy eyes became my morning ritual. I started writing ideas for a business. At first, they were silly. But even silly ideas are seeds. One idea felt different. I paused, staring at the page. "This could work," I whispered to my plant. I researched, planned, and set a tiny budget. I was learning discipline without even realizing it. Friends still laughed at my plant mentor, but I didn't mind. I had momentum now. I faced setbacks, a rejected proposal, a failed design. I felt defeated. The plant reminded me silently. I needed patience. I breathed and started again. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, my small steps became habits. My ideas grew clearer. One evening, I realized I hadn't procrastinated all day. The plant's magic, or maybe my discipline, worked. I whispered a thank you to the plant. It had been my unlikely mentor, teaching patience, focus, and belief. He noticed something strange. The more care he gave to the plant, the calmer his mind felt. Watering it became like a ritual, a reminder that small acts done daily can grow into something powerful. One morning, Ethan whispered, "What do you think, little plant? Should I work harder today?" Of course, the plant didn't answer. But somehow, Ethan imagined its silence meant yes. That day, Ethan finished all his tasks. Emails, reports, even cleaning his messy kitchen. He felt lighter, freer, as if the plant's quiet presence had pushed him forward. Days passed. The plant grew taller. And with it, Ethan's discipline grew too. It was like they were partners on the same journey. One evening, Ethan's friend Mark visited. He laughed. "You talk to a plant? That's insane." Ethan smiled. "Maybe, but it's teaching me more than people do." Mark shook his head. You're turning weird, Ethan. But Ethan replied softly, weird habits grow strong results. That night, Ethan thought about his own words. Weird habits grow strong results. Maybe the plant wasn't just teaching him discipline. Maybe it was teaching him courage to be different. He began waking up early. He worked before sunrise, when the world was still silent. Every morning, the plant was his first companion. Slowly, his small online project started making money. Not much at first, just enough for coffee and rent. But it was a start, and Ethan felt proud. Ethan whispered to the plant, "Thank you, partner." In his heart, he believed it was more than just a plant. It was his silent mentor, his guide to discipline and patience. The weeks rolled by. Ethan's tiny income began to grow. Every coin felt like a leaf sprouting from the soil of his effort. One morning, Ethan saw the first flower bloom on the plant. A small, fragile blossom, but full of meaning. It felt like the plant was saying, "Keep going." Ethan whispered, "If you can bloom, so can I." He felt a fire inside. Not loud, not wild, but steady, like a candle that refuses to die. His projects grew faster now. He worked long hours, but his heart was light. Because every time he saw the plant, he remembered, growth takes patience. Mark visited again. This time, he didn't laugh. He stared at the blooming plant and whispered, "Maybe it's not so crazy after all." Ethan laughed softly. "It's never been about the plant, Mark. It's about what it reminded me of." Mark tilted his head, curious but silent. Ethan explained, "Discipline grows like a plant. You water it every day. One day it blooms." Mark chuckled nervously. "I guess I should buy a plant too." Ethan smiled. "Not just a plant. A habit." Months passed. Ethan's projects exploded with success. What once bought him coffee now bought him freedom. He moved into a larger apartment, but he carried the plant with him. Because it wasn't just decoration, it was his silent mentor. As his wealth grew, people asked him, "What's your secret?" Ethan always smiled and answered, "Discipline." But in his heart, he knew the truth started with a plant. One evening, he sat by the plant again. It was taller than ever, strong and beautiful. He whispered, "We did it." He realized something. The plant had never spoken a word, yet it had taught him more than any teacher. Sometimes, the strangest mentors are the best ones. They remind us that growth is slow, steady, and silent. But in the end, it changes everything. So remember this. Even a plant can teach discipline, patience, and self-belief. If Ethan could turn silence into success, what could you do with your own habits? The answer is waiting for you to water it. And now, dear listener, what is your unlikely mentor? Think about it, and share this story with someone who might need a little inspiration.